Hello, everyone. Welcome to Concordia University's Force-Space, and thank you for joining us for today's event, Creative Aging, Perspectives from the Bold exhibition. Help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube. We are live from Force-Space, located on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. Here at Force-Space, we work with our university community to help mobilize knowledge, co-creating daily activities that examine research questions and projects in development, such as this one, across the university. We're running today's event as a live stream Zoom meeting, so we do welcome comments and questions via raised hand or in the chat. Those of you in the space, if you like to have a question or have anything, just let us know. We'll raise your hand, we'll get a microphone over to you. Okay, with that, it's my pleasure to hand it over to Associate Director of the ACT Lab, Constance Lafontaine. Welcome back, Constance.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out today. It's such a pleasure to see people that we've been seeing for the last few days and also new faces. So welcome, bienvenue tout le monde. Aujourd'hui, la table ronde sera en anglais et en français, sera bilingue. So we will have some presenters presenting their work in English and others in French. And we encourage everyone at the end to ask questions in the language in which they're most comfortable. Alors aujourd'hui, on va jeter un regard sur l'exposition Bold que nous avons montée en collaboration avec plusieurs intervenants. We're going to take a closer look at the Bold exhibit that we've put together. Actually, we didn't put them together. People, our collaborators, worked to put this together. So we're hearing from just a few of them today. We're going to watch videos. We're going to hear more about the works that are around you and that will be around us for until next Wednesday, the 15th. And it's an opportunity to think about the intersections, the multiple intersections between creativity and aging, making, art, and the life course. So, alors sans plus tarder, je vais vous présenter tout le monde et puis ensuite on donnera la parole à notre première intervenante. Mais nous avons avec nous Valérie Blais, Sandrine Poirier-Allard. We also have Sheila McNally and Eric Craven. So first up, we will hear from Sheila McNally, who has curated the Advantage exhibit that we have just on the other side of the screen. And this brings the work of many artists together. So Sheila is an artist living in the Montreal area. She returned to academic studies after working as an environmental journalist in Canada and Mexico. Her work as a writer, sculptor, and curator explores our unconscious mimicry of patterns and structures in relation to memory, aging, and the feminine. She graduated this spring with a Bachelor's of Fine Arts from Concordia. So welcome, Sheila.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. The show that we did, Advantage Reinvention, came about with conversations that artists that I've met, some of them I was students with in Concordia, and we kind of, the older students found one another and compared notes, and it was a different experience from us. Some of us, this was my second degree, other people were returning. And what came out of it was this idea of emerging, becoming artists, reinventing ourselves. And we would get frustrated because often the grants that we were told to look at or the residencies had an age limit. The age limit was 35. And we would talk about, well, where is this idea coming from that you don't emerge, that you don't continue to grow? So we started having discussions about this idea of aging instead of kind of a slow decline into decrepitude. What about thinking of aging as a different kind of emerging? That there is a part of us that's emerging that wasn't there before. And as we say goodbye to the things of our youth, what comes instead? And with that was this idea of that we continue to be creative, we continue to grow, and what are the advantages of aging, which is something we don't often talk about. We hear a lot about palliative care, dementia, the things that, health issues, and those are a reality of aging, absolutely. But what are the other things that come along with it? It's not all doom and gloom. There are some incredible things. And with that, we started talking about our creativity and how so many of us felt like we were making connections and seeing things in a way that we didn't when we were younger. And it was almost like our brain was rewiring in a way. And we wanted to be part of this conference to actually show here are all the artists here are over 50. Here are they're actually self-actualizing. They're actually doing this. They're taking that creative spirit and creating and emerging, and all in different stages. We have some of the ceramicists who have been doing it for 35, 40 years. I'm new at it. I've only been doing it for 5 years. And through that, we came up with some really interesting discussions about creativity. One that, we really think being creative is one of the key elements to being human, and that everyone needs to realize they're creative, and that we started talking about how this needs to be seen as a right to life, the ability to create, but not keep it so defined. So like, no, you're only creating if you are making a piece and you're putting on a pedestal. But bringing this idea of creativity to everything we do. I mean, one of the most creative things we've done is parenting, whether it's our child or our animals. And almost every work we do, there's always an element of creativity. So what we need to change the dialogue and make it not be just for a specific group, i.e. artists, but also this idea of it's part of our everyday, how we're doing it. And how as we're aging, we're also creating. We're finding creative ways around the problems that pop up with aging. We're finding new ways of doing things. And to add this element of excitement to it, so we're not fearful. We called the exhibit Reinvention because it's all these elements that are not really behaving as they're supposed to. We have baskets that are not really baskets. We have bottles that are not really bottles. We have books that have been turned into work of art. We have mannequins turned into a beautiful piece. So it's this idea of let's continually keep reinventing ourselves, emerging. Let's make aging not something where we have to be afraid of, because there's a dialogue out there that we're continually being given about aging, and particularly for women. But we're supposed to just, kind of somehow fade off into the corner and wait to either when there's something that needs to be cleaned up or they need a volunteer. And it's a period for so many of us that's an incredibly creative time. We also have time. Our children are growing, some of our commitments are over. It's a period where we also have time to reflect. And I think something that is missing in our current culture is this idea of time to create, time to slow down, creative idleness. And when we're all moving at this pace that is so incredibly fast, or the kind of strains that we're putting on our younger women where, they have to be super corporate, a corporate raider, and then go home and be super mom, and then be, a super vixen in the bedroom. And there's this drive for perfection, and they are not being given the time to kind of slow down and create. And I think it's all tied together of how we move forward in aging, but also what we give to the younger generation to be able to say, it's okay to slow down. It's okay to say, I need time to create. I need time to sit and be in my life. And I think the key into that is this idea of creativity, where everyone has a right to create. And everyone has a right to think of themselves as creative. It's something that nourishes our spirit. It's something that makes us feel good. It's about being human. And then the last thing I'll talk about is how it's really important to have this discussion with the advent of AI. AI is coming up, and I didn't sign up to be in a world where AI is writing the poetry, painting the pictures, and we're sweeping the streets. I'm looking at going, how did this happen? Why is AI going after our creative things, the things that we turn to? When we have questions, when we have sorrows, when we have periods of, when we're looking for answers, we turn to our art, we turn to our poetry, we turn to our paintings, our music. And suddenly we have this AI that's doing it for us. And I think we really need to sit and talk about, why is AI, why is this where AI is being implemented? Why can't AI be doing my taxes? Why is why is AI not doing the dishes? Like, why is that being taken away from us? And we're supposed to just become these passive consumers of it. And so I think it's tied in, it's also aging, this idea of let's not passively age, let's age with, not with this idea of emerging, being creative, actualizing it, like the show is women who have actualized it, and show people that aging doesn't have to be something that we are fearful of. So.
Thank you so much, Sheila. And I will ask our next presenters, we'll introduce our next presenters. Je vais présenter nos prochaines intervenantes. Alors, Sandrine Poirier-Allard œuvre en tant qu'actrice dans le domaine artistique depuis plus de 20 ans. Elle explore différents médiums dans le domaine cinématographique. Parallèlement à sa vie d'interprète, elle développe une pratique de documentariste souhaitant mettre en lumière des parcours individuels dans tout ce qu'ils ont de grandiose et d'imparfait. Aussi, elle poursuit sa maîtrise en sociologie pour continuer d'approfondir ses réflexions par rapport au vieillissement et à la place des femmes dans l'intime. Depuis plusieurs années, elle enseigne aussi le jeu caméra à des étudiants de tout âge au parcours diversifié. C'est en partie à travers l'enseignement aux aînés dans le contexte de HLM et le fait d'être témoin de leur expérience de vie qu'elle a eu envie de mettre sur pied des projets sociaux et culturels les impliquant. Valérie Blais travaille comme intervenante psychosociale des aînés et comme artiste visuelle depuis plusieurs années. C'est à la rencontre de ces deux passions qu'elle découvre le pouvoir des arts dans un contexte de transformation sociale. Après des études en sciences politiques, ainsi qu'au fil de formation et d'expériences terrain, elle développe une expertise et un regard critique sur les enjeux entourant le vieillissement et la justice sociale. Valérie œuvre maintenant à faire rayonner les personnes aînées en mettant au monde divers projets créatifs les impliquant. Donc, ensemble, elles ont fondé Collectionneuses, qui travaillent au rayonnement des parcours artistiques des aînés dans une perspective créative du vieillissement et pour en faire la richesse quotidienne. Alors, je vous invite à nous parler un peu et puis ensuite nous montrer votre court-métrage.
Merci, Constance. C'est toujours vraiment gênant, cette partie-là, où on parle de nous, mais on est là. Donc, oui, enchantée. Merci d'être là, c'est vraiment super. Donc, comme Constance l'a exprimé, puis aussi comme Sheila vient de le faire de manière extraordinaire, moi puis Valérie, on se regardait tout le long, puis on était comme « Mon Dieu, c'est ça qu'on veut dire! » Fait que c'est déjà dit, on n'a plus besoin de rien dire. Euh, non, mais oui, c'est ça. En fait, moi puis Valérie, on a mis sur pied un organisme à but non lucratif justement pour essayer de mettre sur pied des projets artistiques avec des aînés qui en ont pas fait, en fait, des personnes aînées qui ont pas fait de leur carrière professionnelle une carrière artistique. Donc, des gens justement qui développent une pratique artistique un peu plus tard dans leur vie, puis qui ont quand même envie d'en faire en quelque sorte, une carrière ou quelque chose de sérieux qui les suit au quotidien. Donc c'est ça. Puis en fait, nous, ce qu'on va présenter aujourd'hui, puis ce dont on va vous parler brièvement, c'est un court-métrage qu'on a fait en fait cet été, grâce aussi au financement de Engage, qui est une bourse fournie par Concordia. Donc, c'est ça, on a fait un court-métrage avec une femme de 84 ans qui s'avère à être ma grand-mère, qui est une artiste, en fait, qui est une chanteuse, mais qui en a pas nécessairement fait non plus sa vie. Donc là, je pars dans toutes les directions, mais je vais laisser Valérie parler un petit peu plus de notre organisme.
Je parlerai un peu du pourquoi on a mis sur pied ce projet-là. En fait, en tant qu'intervenante auprès des personnes aînées, pendant la pandémie, on a essayé un peu de se revirer de bord puis se demander qu'est-ce qu'on fait pour briser l'isolement, aller vers, puis continuer d'avoir des interactions. Puis on s'est dit que l'art pouvait être un vecteur vraiment intéressant de continuer d'être ensemble puis de partager même dans le plus creux du confinement. Alors, on a mis sur pied des projets de spectacles de balcon, fait que des artistes qui venaient à la rencontre des aînés puis qui pouvaient présenter soit à l'extérieur de leur domicile ou même par téléphone, fait que des musiciennes qui appelaient des personnes aînées puis qui leur jouaient de la musique au téléphone. Puis le retour qu'on a eu de la plupart des artistes, c'est hey, je me sens mal, mais finalement j'ai pas tant joué de musique, c'est plus la personne elle-même qui m'en a joué. Où il y a eu des discussions très intéressantes qui sont nées de ce projet-là sur c'est quoi la place des personnes aînées en tant qu'artiste plus qu'en tant que spectateur, spectatrice passif ou passive, tu sais. Puis c'est là qu'on s'est mis à interagir avec une dame de 97 ans qui a joué beaucoup de musique dans sa vie, mais à cause d'un parcours, tu sais, de femme monoparentale, à faible revenu, elle n'avait jamais vraiment profité ou fait profiter les autres, mais elle avait beaucoup passé de temps, elle a des cahiers complets, elle a une bibliothèque du country des années 40, 50, vraiment riche. Fait que, au départ, on voulait faire le petit court-métrage sur elle, mais malheureusement, elle est tombée plus malade, fait qu'on n'a pas pu aller de l'avant avec ce projet-là, mais on a trouvé une super remplaçante pour notre projet parce que je pense que ça manque pas des personnes qui ont, puis surtout des femmes qui ont des parcours artistiques, qui ont une pratique quotidienne, mais que c'est un peu dans le confin de leur salon, donc on n'y a pas tant accès. Puis c'est là qu'on a créé le petit court-métrage style vidéoclip qu'on va vous présenter aujourd'hui. Est-ce qu'on le présente, puis après on continue sur un peu le pourquoi, puis notre réflexion sur la créativité? Ouais. Il y a le petit délai, je pense qu'ils vont mettre les gens sur Zoom pour qu'ils puissent voir aussi.
On s'était fait dire que ça serait le awkward moment. Donc, on veut s'assurer que ce le soit, donc on parlera pas.
Mais peut-être en attendant, s'il y a des gens qui sont debout qui veulent s'asseoir, il y a de la place en avant. Hein? People, anybody standing in the back, if you want to sit, there's room in the front and on the side over there.
Est-ce que vous m'en... Ouais, voilà. Il y avait juste un petit clip à la fin du vidéoclip où on montrait la première protagoniste. Il est peut-être trop tard là, pour le mettre. Je ne veux pas tout reboguer, mais ça nous fait plaisir vu que c'était vraiment l'instigatrice du projet, là.
C'est notre inspiration.
Bon, vous voyez pourquoi on voulait le montrer. Je pense que c'est important.
Donc, comme vous avez pu le voir, en fait, nous, vraiment, notre idée avec notre organisme, c'est ça un peu, c'est de mettre à profit notre expertise, nos contacts de manière professionnelle, puis d'essayer de faire arriver des projets artistiques avec des personnes aînées, justement, qui en ont pas, tu sais, puis c'est le cas de Bernice, ma grand-mère, c'était le cas de Madeleine aussi, tu sais, c'est souvent le parcours artistique, c'était une vie parallèle, c'était quelque chose qu'ils pouvaient pas nécessairement se permettre dans leur contexte de vie à elles, mais c'est pas quelque chose qu'elles ont pas développé, c'est quelque chose qui les a probablement aidées à vivre tout au long de cette vie-là qui était relativement difficile, qui était une vie justement d'élever des enfants tout seul, d'essayer de travailler à droite à gauche pour y arriver. Fait que notre idée principale, puis après ça, évidemment, les artistes aînés qui en ont fait une carrière nous intéressent aussi, mais ils nous intéressent un petit peu moins. Dans le sens que nous, vraiment, l'idée, c'est d'être comme des curatrices un peu de parcours artistique de personnes âgées qui développent ça un petit peu plus tard dans leur vie, justement. Donc, c'est ça.
Je veux pas répéter tout ce que Sheila a dit parce que je pense que ça l'expliquait vraiment bien l'objectif, mais tu sais, c'est important pour nous d'apporter une importance puis de briser un peu les frontières entre l'art dit amateur puis l'art dit professionnel, parce que je pense que à n'importe quel moment de la vie, on peut avoir un impact puis une inspiration, être une inspiration pour le monde des arts actuels. Puis c'est un peu ça notre envie. Puis je vous dis vite nos prochains projets, puis après ça, je pense qu'on passera le micro. Ah, toi, tu voulais... Okay.
Oui, puis aussi, je pense que c'est ce qu'on a remarqué, surtout Valérie dans son travail, puis durant la pandémie, tu sais, c'est que ce qui était particulièrement important pour les organisations, c'était de s'occuper justement des besoins dits primaires des personnes âgées, c'est-à-dire des besoins concrets de justement d'habitation, de nourriture, d'alimentation et tout. Sauf que nous, c'est un petit peu là qu'on vient s'inscrire aussi, puis on est comme, ben probablement que la création artistique, ça fait aussi partie des besoins primaires, puis ça donne un sens à la vie, puis ça donne une envie de vivre qui est aussi importante, sinon peut-être même plus, là, peut-être que j'exagère un petit peu, mais reste quand même que c'est là où c'est là qu'on a vu le manque à gagner, si on veut, dans tout ce qui était offert, en fait.
Ouais, bien dit. Fait que, prochain projet, c'est sûr que on fait un petit projet à la fois parce qu'on a envie que ça soit de belle envergure, mais puis ça rejoint un peu ce que Sheila disait tantôt, mais on va travailler à une exposition d'un artiste qui a commencé à être peintre à 94 ans. Il y a maintenant 100 ans. Donc, il y a beaucoup de toiles à son actif. Il a travaillé vraiment fort avec beaucoup de temps passé dans son petit atelier. On avait envie de mettre de l'avant un peu l'idée qu'on peut commencer à faire de l'art à n'importe quel âge. Puis, on travaille présentement à une production d'une performance de danse de personnes aînées d'origine haïtienne qui vont présenter leur manière de danser dans un festival de danse urbaine qui est plutôt porté vers des jeunes. Puis, je pense que ça va être intéressant un peu de faire des ponts intergénérationnels à ce moment-là. Puis, il faut dire que toutes les participatrices, parce que c'est que des femmes, étaient vraiment contentes et confiante, surtout dans ce qu'elle pouvait amener à l'événement. Comme, ben oui, on sait super bien danser, on va venir vous montrer. C'était un peu ça, fait que je pense que ça va être vraiment inspirant. Fait que, prochain projet, si ça vous tente de venir voir, ça va être le 1er juin à la Perle Retrouvée à Saint-Michel, mais vous pouvez nous demander des détails après la discussion.
Puis ça, c'est vraiment intéressant ce que Valérie dit, l'attitude par rapport à leur qualité, c'est-à-dire de danseuse. Tu sais, c'est quelque chose qu'on a remarqué aussi. Puis moi, je l'ai remarqué en enseignant en HLM aîné, en enseignant le théâtre. Tu sais, j'ai remarqué que les personnes aînées, il y a un rapport à eux-mêmes, puis justement, puis ça réfère vraiment bien à ce que Sheila disait. Tu sais, il y a un rapport à eux-mêmes qui est transformé, qui fait qu'il y a moins de barrières, tu sais, il y a moins de barrières d'ego, il y a moins, ce qui font que souvent, ben, ils sont plus libres, sont plus disposés, sont plus à l'écoute, sont plus proches d'eux-mêmes puis de ce qu'ils ont envie de mettre de l'avant. Puis ça, c'est super utile comme artiste, évidemment. Fait que je pense que ça aussi, on l'a remarqué en cours de route, cette affaire-là de voir une genre de confiance qui vient d'une confiance qui est relative à un parcours de vie, mais qui est quand même une confiance qui nourrit justement un parcours, un potentiel parcours artistique. Fait que, alors voilà. Donc, merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Valérie, Sandrine. Vous m'entendez? Parfait. Alors, merci. Notre prochaine présentation, our next presenter, Eric Craven. It's my pleasure to introduce to you a longtime collaborator of ours at the ACT Lab, who also collaborates with Engage quite a bit. Eric Craven is a creative digital media facilitator who has worked with many community groups and educational institutions in Montreal. For 12 years, he was the community development librarian at the Atwater Library and Computer Center. Eric's work focuses specifically on using digital media to disrupt normative expectations and perceptions in the community. As coordinator of the Atwater Library's digital literacy project, he has created programming that directly responds to community needs, creating spaces for participants to express themselves, find new ways to talk about things important to them, and to help them build their own communities and work towards their own goals through creative media projects. Eric has worked with a range of academic and community stakeholders, bringing different groups of people together, ages 6 through 96, to express themselves through digital art and media, including many community new media projects focusing on seniors and digital music and video. So welcome, Eric.
Thank you. I forgot that I had to have a microphone until the last minute. That's great. So thank you for such a lovely introduction. And I forgot that we had an introduction so that I can actually skip my first couple slides probably. And thank you for both your presentations. And yeah, it's really, really beautiful. I'm just going to share my screen here. And there we go. And so here, we can take this. So my work at the library and different community groups is a lot about bringing people together and finding spaces for like older folks to collaborate and see what they can do together. But I think I have to come clean and say that I'm realizing over the years that a lot of my work is kind of in this band mindset. So because I've worked in music since I was a teenager, and so you're always like working within a framework, you're collaborating, there's this DIY spirit, you're working with experimentations, and it's playing, but it's also important, and that's part of what I want to have on offer with the projects that I do, is that we want to we're doing these little projects, but they're like, and it's fun, and we're playing, but it's also kind of like important. We want to express ourselves and find ways to kind of see what's there. And there's a lot of parts of what you're talking about emerging artists, and I see this all the time with older folks who come and join up with some kind of project that we're doing. A lot of my projects are a grant that's temporary. It could be 3 months, it could be a year. We have a framework that we're working with. But what I like to try to do is like we start together and see who's in the room, and we try to adapt that and see what interests are, trying to keep them within the frame. Some people will always be busting out of the frame, and we'll try to keep that working. But it's a chance to kind of really like see what you're doing at this point of your life. And I love that what you said, the advantage. What are the advantages of aging and becoming at a different point in your life? Is that a lot of the folks that I work with have been really busy with whatever, whether it was that they're in a more marginalized situation in their community and really busy just trying to keep things together, or they're like a professional with all kinds of expectations on them. And how do we now they're not doing that, and there's this void, so how do we fill that? And so I have an anecdote that I wanted to when I was asked to do this panel with you all, I mentioned this to Constance already. I always love it when you have you give a kind of a theme, because it always pushes me to kind of like connect a few more dots than I might normally do, because usually I'm just explaining what are the objectives of my project. But here, we're like, what is art and transformative impacts of art? So I wanted to. I have to put I'm toggling between my reading glasses here, but I'll read this out. This is an old video. This is about 7 years old now, but this is from our friend Lillian, who was one of those people I described who had a very busy career, and then started getting hooked on these kind of projects and really becoming like an emerging artist. So she says, you discover in yourself skills that you're unaware of or haven't developed. The first thing that happens when you retire is you lose who you are, because your identity has been defined by work. This type of creative workshop helps me find ways to redefine myself. It's about the creative part. It's there and must have always been there. Working with technology is new that I could never imagine would be so fun. So I think that's kind of like this real theme here with what we're working on. And I wanted just also to say that this was a project where we agreed to do 150 videos in a year. And this was one of these contexts for like when you're working in a community, you apply for all these things, and I don't know, maybe we shouldn't, maybe I was kind of hoping we wouldn't get this one, because we did 150 videos. So I was really thinking of your point. Oh, my phone? Okay. So we did all kinds of, Wendy's in the room here, she was part of many of these projects. So we did a project where we looked at things with microscopes and made videos with this. And this is all part of a Canada's 150th anniversary project. And so we did 150-second videos, and we did 150 of them. So this one was part of going out into Cabot Square and just doing things with slow motion. And this is what Lillian came up with. I think I want to, I'm just going to make sure that I'm sharing my sound, because the sounds, yeah, I am, good. Oops. Here we go. Oh, but there's a problem. What is the problem? Is it that there, let's try this now. We should be hearing the sound. I did.
Eric, do you want to try just stopping the screen share and starting it again?
Here. Just a second here. This will just, if I can't get this to work in 10 seconds, we'll go on to something different. But here, I've got this video here, but why don't I hear sound? We have this on there on purpose.
You can also just put the link to that video in the chat, and I can share it from here.
Great.
Let's try that.
We'll do that. Can you hold my microphone for just a second?
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay, here we go. And to the chat. Did you get it? Great. And I got the other one.
I got it. One sec.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to see. And so Lillian did this. We went and looked at things with slow motion. Now, remember, this is about Canada. This is supposed to be, but I had so many videos, I didn't ask anybody what their videos had to do with Canada. We just, that was our funder. And but then she remembered that immigrating to Canada, that one of the things that she knew about Canada before coming here was Paul Anka's Diane. So the sound is a plunderphonics piece that goes with this rearranging Paul Anka. And so I'll let the work speak for itself, because I rarely get to play this video, so I was happy to be here to do this. So what I like about this example is, like, what are we thinking about seniors and what kind of projects they might do at a library? Well, we've really steered off a lot of normative perceptions about what that would be. And I think also too, one of the pieces of the talk too, it has this word about perceptions in it. And I think the first thing is, like, we get involved with this stuff and we're finding these new things, and it's about redefining ourself. And then whether we're going to be talking to, like if I have a weekly group where we have people and we're sharing with each other, well, we're already kind of sharing a different side of ourselves, but maybe we can be here like in the fourth space and watch something like this, and then we're really like, this idea of art being transformative is really great, but it really comes from our own part, right, and our own kind of authentic place, but also a place of what I was saying before, like, we're playing, but it's kind of serious. We're all serious about this. It's funny, the pigeon, but it's also like interesting work. can I send you the other one? That's because I want to make sure we're talking about
Yeah, do that.
the here. Can you hold my microphone for a second? And so I need that one. Hilarious. Just kidding me. Go.
I promise it's worth the wait.
There we go. So that's this one here.
Okay, got it.
And we're just gonna. So what we're going to see is some really recent videos that were collected here at the Scam booth here. And I only saw them, and I wanted to really kind of shout out to Rianne, Alben, Sam, and Francis, and Constance, and Tristana, and Kim, everybody for making this kind of realizing a physical space where we could go and record these things. But this came from a collaboration, I think Anne's here now, where we were playing around during the pandemic, thinking about how we could talk about scams and what we could do with media and how we could normalize kind of a more breezy version of social media that wasn't so precious, that we kind of a little bit more ephemeral. So we were playing around with Snapchat, and we stumbled upon this idea of using Snapchat to talk about success stories of when you've stopped a fraud from happening. And the Snapchat filters, we're not using the whole network or anything like this, but the Snapchat filters are great because it also helps us from feeling shy. It's also kind of funny. It's also all kinds of different things that it kind of helps us do. But I also like this example because it really inverts the kind of idea that in society we need to protect the seniors from scams, right? There's always that narrative that we're trying to protect people, and that's that's very true. We have a lifetime of experience too, right? And so, and probably a lot of older folks are averting scams constantly, and we don't talk about that. And so, how do we, kind of bolster that? So so this came from here too. So this has got a whole story and then a couple of other examples. Thank you.
I just want to tell you about my brother-in-law who was scammed, and it was really, really scary. Someone called and said he was a police officer, and he was calling about his grandson who was had been taken into custody because he had been in a car that was impounded by the police, and they found some drugs in the car and some alcohol. And so the boys that were in the car were all taken into custody. And they were prepared to release him on bail, but he needed $2,400 in order to be released on bail. And he had suggested that his grandfather be called rather than his father, because his father was a big disciplinarian and would be very angry at him and probably wouldn't pay the bail, and he'd be severely punished. My brother-in-law was quite taken in because he knew that his son was very strict and probably would punish his grandson. He felt sorry for his grandson because he's a great boy, and he asked to speak to him, and they allowed him to speak to him. And it sounded very like his grandson, who said that he didn't realize there were drugs in the car. He had gone with his friends and he didn't realize it. So my brother-in-law was trying to find his visa to pay the $2,400 when his wife came in. And she got involved, and she said, let me talk to my grandson again. And so they put him on again, and she just said, what is the name of my dog? And of course, the line went dead. They went off because they didn't know the name of her dog. So she was really, really smart. And so she prevented the scam. But had she not been home, my brother-in-law would have given his visa, and they would have been out by 2400. Bye. I hope you can learn something by my story.
So I sat for 4 hours thinking about what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Completely, by this point, I'm terrified and I'm so embarrassed. Why didn't I see this? How was I so naive?
Obviously, but this one specific time, it was a text message from the Royal Bank of Canada. That's what it says, right? And she does have an account at the Royal Bank of Canada.
Taken her change purse out of her bag and took all her credit cards and cash. It was a really bad story. So that obviously the couple, the people were working.
So yeah, thank you for sharing those like that directly. And what I find really great about this approach too is that even though it's this kind of very simple animation that's quite profound, I find like it's amazing how these filters work and how it, but you still see the person and you still hear their accent and you still see their eyes and their mouth and you see all these things, so it's humanized. And I just gave a couple of little examples at the end of that just to see how it works with different types of filters, and then the team here like made sure that the really good filters are right at the top of the list, though, so that you can kind of do that. And I think this is like really fun. But I also hits another piece with community development, where we always are wanting to kind of promote our work, get our community. A lot of older folks are involved with community stuff, and they're like, don't want to do stuff on social media because they want to it to be perfect, or they want to have a real kind of a campaign or figure. And a lot of social media is the fun part of it. It's a bit ephemeral. We could put these on Instagram stories and they're just there for 12 hours, and then that's how it can, to kind of get in a practice of kind of displaying a little bit and not worrying about that kind of masterpiece sort of level. So I think that's all I have.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And we're also welcoming new guests. So please make yourselves at home, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for these wonderful presentations. And I'll let the audience kind of think about if they have any questions for our speakers. But my first question would be, do you have any questions for each other?
Well, I wanted to thank you for your film. It's not often we see older women celebrated and in a beautiful, there were so many shots where it was beautiful. Often, the way that mainstream media portrays us is it's always the crazy old lady, who's either the one who's complaining, or the one who's the insane one in the house, or we don't often see this kind of celebration. So it was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Merci. Je vais répondre en français, ça va juste être plus facile puis fluide. mais en fait, c'est intéressant d'amener ce point-là parce que nous, c'est quelque chose qui nous a impacté aussi beaucoup, puis qui a impacté Bernice parce que on a dû la convaincre, tu sais, que ça allait bien paraître sur caméra, qu'elle était belle, que ça valait la peine qu'on fasse le projet. Tu sais, c'était pas par rapport à ses capacités de chanter. Ça, elle savait qu'elle était capable, mais c'était est-ce que ça va être intéressant, puis est-ce que je suis encore assez belle pour qu'on le fasse aujourd'hui? Fait que je pense que d'où l'importance de ce projet-là aussi beaucoup, là, tu sais. Mais merci beaucoup.
Oui, merci vraiment. Puis nous, à chaque fois qu'on le regarde, on est comme, mon Dieu, qu'elle est belle, puis c'est beau, puis ça paraît bien, puis elle a l'air bien aussi. Puis ça a été la même chose avec Madame Normand à la base, Madame Normand qui était notre inspiration de 94 ans. Il a fallu vraiment beaucoup la rassurer encore une fois, puis lui dire que ce qu'elle faisait, c'était beau, c'était bon, tu sais. Fait que je pense qu'il y a beaucoup de ça qui qui rend notre travail important, c'est dans le sens que cette idée-là de devoir un peu déconstruire le discours intérieur des personnes plus âgées, en fait, par rapport à eux-mêmes puis par rapport à leur capacité d'être au monde, tu sais. Donc, vraiment, c'est beau que vous ayez remarqué ça. Merci beaucoup.
Alors, j'ouvrirai à l'auditoire. I would encourage the audience. Does anybody have a question? We'll have a mic for you if you have one.
If anyone has, just raise your hand. I'll bring a microphone. If you guys could just share that one at the desk.
Thank you, everyone. That was really inspiring and exciting. I have a question just about this area of work, having worked a long time with Eric. It requires very special talent. All of you have very special talents. But it also requires a context in which you can work and have some kind of security. And I'm just wondering what you would suggest. What would be the ideal context for doing this kind of having a community of practice, doing this kind of work that would be sustainable, that wouldn't be struggling for every grant?
Great question, Wendy. Who wants to take that?
Take it? I have some thoughts with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the important thing is community, and to come together and to not wait for it to happen. One of the reasons we started this show is that the one thing we all had in common was no one was coming to knock on our door. No, there was no galleries interested. Nobody was showing any interest. So we were like, all right, we're going to have to make it happen. And we're going to have to look for community and look for connections and not be afraid to ask for help. And I think when you start doing that, you start to make different connections and you start to get this whole energy happening. Money is always an issue for anything, right? Like, I mean, we live in a society where anything to do with humans doesn't pay. It doesn't pay to do art, it doesn't pay to look after kids, it doesn't pay to be a nurse, it doesn't pay to be a fireman, and I think that's just a reality. So we started really getting creative about how can we do this on a shoestring budget, and there's ways around that. But I think when you start to get a critical mass, then you're going to have people step forward with the money. Like I think the government is starting to realize you have to invest in community in order to have a good society. So it's for me, it's just keep doing the work, keep making the connections, and including everybody, you know, including everybody, because these are issues that are going to affect everyone.
Je vais encore poursuivre en français, mais je pense que c'est aussi l'importance de faire des projets intergénérationnels, tu sais, de justement, tu sais, d'utiliser les capacités aussi de la jeunesse pour justement mettre en action ce type de projet-là, puis que peut-être qu'on ait moins besoin d'argent pour le faire parce que justement, il y a des gens qui sont volontaires pour donner de leur temps, de donner de leur énergie. Puis je pense que c'est un petit peu ça qu'on a vu à travers notre projet. Tu sais, évidemment, on n'a pas eu énormément d'argent pour faire ce projet-là, mais il y a quand même eu des gens qui autour de nous qui se sont mobilisés pour faire ça bénévolement avec nous parce que eux, en parallèle, ils ont des carrières artistiques, ils travaillent, fait qu'ils n'ont pas nécessairement besoin dans toutes les sphères de leur vie que ce soit lucratif. Puis je pense que c'est ça aussi l'idée, tu sais, c'est d'essayer de s'allier puis de s'allier avec des gens qui n'ont pas nécessairement besoin tu sais, puis je pense qu'en faisant des projets intergénérationnels, justement, c'est plus possible aussi, tu sais.
I agree. Making things intergenerational too, but also just all the voices, like as many different types of people and skills. I think it's talked a lot about, and a lot of people in this room understand too, that a lot of grants are temporary and they're highly themed and they're strategic for whatever the funder needs to do. And what we really need is, and sometimes you're talking about money is an issue, but it's actually not a lot of money probably just to have somebody who can kind of keep doing it and keep keep a place year after year, or and kind of acquire that, like that tacit knowledge, but also tacit knowledge for whatever institution you're at too, to kind of to hold those things. And then instead of just having one community practice that I'm doing, like maybe every morning there's a different group doing something and they're continuing and they all have different ideas, and you kind of make a space that does that. But it's not only hard for the people like us doing the work, but it's also really upsetting for sometimes somebody coming from the community, and then they've finally got invested and understood how to do this project, and it just at the point where they're kind of feeling like comfortable with it, it ends, and now we're like, okay, we're not doing photography anymore, we're doing some other thing and whatever, and you might not, and not all these things are the same, so some kind of continuity. How many times people tell me that the work I'm doing is essential to the work that they need to do, whether it's at university or somewhere else, but there's not a line for it in that way, right? And what it actually requires. And I know that in this room, like engage in act and all that, you understand that well and do a lot to remedy that situation. But it's something that needs to always be pushed forward a little bit.
Any other questions? I think I saw a hand up. Oh.
Thanks very much to everybody. I really love what everybody's been saying. My question is more around actually, collaborating with people. I find that oftentimes people who are, however you want to say it, older adults, seniors, are ready to jump into things and have lost a lot of the sort of like debt gêné that we can have when we're younger, which is very helpful. My question is more about the distinction between craft and trade and art. Because the thing that I often hear is like, oh, you're the artist. I'm not an artist. But if I think of that, my mother has quilted her entire life. She clothed us. To my mind, she is an artist, but she would never call herself that. And so to get someone like my mom or, my friend's father who makes beautiful, beautiful woodworking to actually engage in something that has the word art can be a bit of a challenge, right? So I'm just curious if any of you have come up against that sort of like preconception and how you might address it.
Oh yeah. Continual discussion. I think part of the work we need to do is take away this stigma, which was put on anything. If you look at the discussion between art and craft, craft if it's useful, art if it's on a pedestal. And I think it's something that we really need to have a serious discussion about. And this idea of, it's also based in a lot of sexism. If you look at the work that women did, as soon as a woman touched it, it became craft. Knitting is a craft, embroidery is a craft, quilting is a craft. And then you often see what happens is a man will start doing it, and then suddenly it's art. So it's something that we have to just call it as it's elitist crap, as far as I'm concerned. And this idea of, you're only creative if you're an artist in the Beaux-Arts. Because there are people who are doing craft. Whether it's craft or not, it's beautiful. They're doing beautiful work. And I look at Japan, and Japan doesn't have this discussion. Everything they do is art. Whether they're plating their food, whether they're pouring their tea, whether it's in their homes, whether it's their clothes, everything is art. And when you open that up, it takes away the elitism. Also this idea that art is only for rich people who can have like a room that's 6 feet by 9 feet and put some giant sculpture in it. I think we need to start saying that art is just part of life, and destigmatize the word and put it as creative. Come and be creative. And if you show your creativity through woodwork, fantastic. And the way we love to categorize things. We'd like to look at it and go, oh, here's a piece of knitting that a woman did. Oh, well, it's craft. It can't ever be art. And to really start looking at that and be going, let's take this elitism away. We don't need to have such a defined thing. the line is really blurry because you can start to see what's happening in fiber. It's now called fiber arts, where suddenly we have museums showing works of crochet and knitting and paper and all this idea of I mean, before that would have been considered non-artistic material. So as we start to redefine ourselves, we can start to redefine the materials we use and bring people in who don't see themselves as artists and have them redefine themselves as, oh, I'm creating. I'm taking a piece of wood and making something out of it. So it doesn't matter if someone's labeling it craft. For me, it's a piece of my creativity. And then just make it art more accessible to everybody.
Constance, we have a question on Zoom.
That sounds great. Unless you want
It's for Eric from Jean Williams. Well done, Eric. And the question is re-sustainability. Should small groups approach their local libraries? Mentioning that you have worked with several.
Maybe, but libraries also, that's Jean, you said? Jean?
Yes, Jean Williams.
Okay. Hi, Jean. It's funny because I was thinking of you when we were talking about the widening creativity, and I agree 100%. Anything that's involving getting rid of elitist crap, or however you phrased it, is all good news for me as well. The thing about Jean, who it's great. She's a great example because last year I did a project with the Atwater Library about digital mapping with seniors, and which was less like clear how you make that creative, and lots of people did all kinds of creative stuff. And she did all kinds of interesting maps, did a whole project about Indigenous health centers in Montreal, and tremendous amount of creativity, but it's just a different kind of framework, right? And Jean's like me, also has a library science degree, and obviously is still pumping the libraries. And I think libraries are a great resource, but I'm not sure. Sometimes it's just wherever you can find the kind of a flexible way to work. It's about, it could be a library if you have the right executive director, in the right context. So I don't know. That's not a really good answer, Jean, but anyway. I'm glad that you're here, and I appreciate you.
You all engage with stereotypes, or you seem to circumvent them in different ways through your pieces and the way that you've discussed this. Is this something that you try to do deliberately, or the process takes you there, or how do stereotypes about aging, expectations about later life impact your artistic choices or the artistic choices of the people that you've been working with?
I think to exist as an aging woman in today's society, unless you want to spend your time chasing the youth, spending your time at the gym doing Botox, I think there's such a narrow definition of what it is to be an older woman that the minute you step out of that, you are taking it on. Because if we were to listen to if I was to follow the kind of societal guidebook that was given to me, I never would have gone back to school. I went back to school at 57. I wouldn't be out. I would be dressing a certain way. I would be thinking a certain way, and I would be telling myself, I can't do that. I'm of a certain age. And there's such a pressure on when you age to disappear, particularly females, to shut up, disappear, go sit in the corner, be grandma in the typical sense, don't complain, don't challenge anything, which is the absolute antithesis of older women. We get more radical as we age. So I think it's very easy. I think it's just a byproduct of being older and female and trying to navigate your way, that you just invariably take on the stereotypes, whether you're doing it consciously or not. It's just because otherwise you end up in this box that's no fun. It's it's a boring box to live in.
Puis je continuerai sur la question des stéréotypes. Nous, c'est quelque chose qu'on s'est beaucoup demandé, tu sais, s'il n'y avait pas toute la question des subventions à demander, puis est-ce qu'on parlerait d'artistes aînés ou est-ce qu'on parlerait d'artistes seulement, tu sais, puis je pense que c'est une question ouverte qu'on va se poser longtemps. Après ça, je pense qu'il y a beaucoup de travail d'éducation à faire, puis ça revient à la question qu'on répondait avant sur la différence entre le craft puis l'art puis tout ça. Je pense que notre travail à nous par rapport à combattre l'agisme puis les stéréotypes, c'est beaucoup du aller vers, parce que je pense qu'il y a beaucoup de préconceptions qui sont très intériorisées. Fait que, est-ce que j'ai le droit d'être artiste et aîné? Quand on propose des projets à des personnes de 60 ans et plus, c'est vraiment d'essayer de aussi convaincre que c'est possible, tu sais. Puis ce travail-là, peut-être qu'éventuellement, à force que ça fasse boule de neige, puis qu'il y ait de plus en plus de projets inspirants entourant l'art et les aînés, il y aura moins besoin de le faire, mais je pense que c'est un travail que nous, on doit encore mettre de l'avant, tu sais.
Definitely. I'm not sure if I like the way you phrased the question about whether it's process or it's this. I think it's similar to your perception too. Like, as soon as you're doing anything outside the norm, you're already in the weirdo camp, and that's great. I think if you actually do get people together and listen to them, you're already going to be doing that. So that's part of your process that's going to come out. And if you are listening and you're trying to honor what people are contributing, that's going to take you all kinds of wild places. So it's all about like listening more than talking. And I think that's part of that. That's a process piece that seems simple, but it can be kind of profound, and it's profound that it doesn't exist in more places.
We've got a couple more questions. Maybe I'll just. You go ahead and then we'll go down.
Sheila, I wanted to ask you about that term you use, creative idleness, which I just love, because there's so much pressure to stay busy. But if you've been busy all your life, I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that notion, because I think it also challenges the idea of active aging as something we should aspire to, and as a norm that is like, yeah, age positively, be busy. People are busy. So can you just talk a little more about this term, creative idleness, which I totally want to quote you on?
Well, it was part of my discovery was the ability to have an idea or have a project. I mean, when I started ceramics, there's a lot of steps to it. And you can't rush it. You know, you have to let the clay dry, you have to, put it in the kiln, there's processes. And with that it makes you slow down just by the sheer process of it. But I also like the idea of, being able to think about, sit with yourself. There's this trope that, you're going to just dive into something and start doing it and start planning it. And very much for my process was I have to maybe have an idea, but sit with it, work with it, but also let it evolve. And for me, I don't create well when there's pressure. And why is there this idea of everybody's supposed to create in the same way. Everybody's supposed to have it's specific time. Some of the best ideas I've had or connections I've had is when I'm sitting in the garden or I slow down. And there is we have such a pressure to be busy and productive all the time. And that's another trope that comes with aging, that suddenly, we're not productive anymore. We're not out there running around. We're not doing, 80-hour work weeks. We're not produce. We're not contributing. And I think that's another myth that we fall into, that if we are not productive, therefore we're not valid. But there is such a thing as just allowing yourself to be in the moment. Sit with yourself. The whole thing about mindfulness, and to not beat up on ourselves when maybe you have a day where you're tired. Maybe you have a day where you can't be super productive. And also this idea of letting things percolate, letting something, I'm going to plant that seed. I'm going to see how it grows. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to have a dialogue with myself. And then the idea of, taking the shame away from, idle hands are the work of the devil kind of thing. But this idea of, okay, maybe I'm not producing something right now, but maybe I am recharging. Maybe I am growing something. Maybe I am, to see myself as like my garden. Sometimes there's one corner that's blooming. Sometimes there's another that's growing that needs to lie fallow for a little while, and to extend that grace to ourselves. So then suddenly we are not putting this time pressure on ourselves. Like we're allowed to slow down. And I think we can give that gift to other generations and say, it's okay. It's okay to go slow, take time to, there's the slow movement for food, there's a slow movement for all these things, and the idea of just slowing down. So my idea of creative idleness came out of that.
We have another question.
Je veux parler en français parce que c'est plus facile pour moi. Je trouve ça très intéressant de penser l'art différemment. Quand j'avais 50 ans, je me demandais qu'est-ce que je vais faire quand je vais être vieille, quand je vais être à la retraite. Et là, toutes sortes de stéréotypes venaient. Donc, c'est le jardinage, la peinture, l'artisanat. Mais moi, je me disais, non, je ne me vois pas là-dedans. Donc, arrivé à 65 ans, j'ai trouvé RECA, donc Ressources endoculturelles contre l'abus envers les aînés, qui font du théâtre pour sensibiliser les aînés envers l'abus envers les aînés. Et tout d'un coup, je suis devenue actrice, facilitatrice, photographe. Même avec Eric, j'ai réussi à faire une vidéo et toutes des choses que j'avais jamais pensé de faire. Et pour moi, c'est toutes des choses qui rentrent dans les domaines de l'art. Donc, c'est intéressant de penser que on peut toujours apprendre des choses et développer des choses qu'on n'avait jamais pensé dans notre vie de jeunesse ou notre vie adulte de faire. Et donc, pour les jeunes, c'est important de se dire, oh non, arriver à la vieillesse, ça va être terrible, ça va être plate. Mais non, c'est une autre sorte d'approche, c'est une nouvelle vie. Et on peut le faire en tant qu'artiste individuel, mais aussi en tant que groupe. Et comme Areka, on est un groupe. Et on apprend les unes des autres. Et moi, je pense que c'est la bonne chose à faire pour bien vieillir. Merci.
Merci, Maria. Est-ce qu'on aurait une dernière question pour nos panélistes? Would there be one last question for our panelists? Yes. On va prendre we're going to get the microphone.
It's actually not a question. It's just a thank you for the synchronicity of the world, of the word idleness with idealness, Sheila. Thank you. Amazing.
We'd have
We have
time
one
for-
more.
Oh, perfect.
I don't want to be the last question, but I find all of what you've said has been so well put and eloquent and very much speaks to my own experience as an older woman. And I was remembering that I took interior design initially, and it was really good to be a designer because that seemed to have some cachet like art does. But people would say, oh, you're doing interior decoration, and then that put me down again. But so when I really learned about words and what they mean and everything was when Izzy Mayaki, who's a fashion designer, if people don't know him, and he was asked about being an artist, and he said, I don't call myself an artist, I'm a maker of things. And I think making is also a word that we haven't talked about today, but I don't know what you think about that kind of idea about making.
I love that idea. In New York, they had, I think it was MoMA had an exhibit called The Makers. And that was when the shift started about this whole silly discussion about craft and art, where they actually looked at people who are making things, and it shifted the dialogue. And I think there's wanting to make things is part of being human. We want to work with our hands. And however, whatever you decide that speaks to you, whether you're making bread, whether you're making a sweater, whether you're making a garden, whether you're making a collage, I think it's something that we need to start saying it's part of what we need as humans. And the satisfaction that people talk about getting when they make a bowl, even if it's wobbly, or they make a sweater, it's that joy of the process, which we've lost. We live in a society where we buy food that's already made, our clothes are already made, and it leaves us, I think we're bereft. There's so much emptiness and sadness, and I think that's because we've taken away the time to give people the time to actually make things, but celebrate that. It's part of, we experience the world through touch. So why wouldn't we want to make things?
J'ai rien à dire de spécifique par rapport à ça, mais je pense que c'est ça aussi, tu sais, faire des choses, c'est s'engager dans sa propre vie, c'est s'engager dans ce qui compose la vie aussi. Fait que je pense que c'est super intéressant, cette idée-là de faire, tu sais. J'avais rien d'autre de spécifique.
I don't have too much to. I mean, of course, Marlene. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. But it made me think of when we first got here today. I was talking with Constance about how I was trying to link the art with that, and you said that. I think you said, well, it's just. I think it's about making things. This is about making things. So everybody's on the same page.
Well, I want to thank our panelists very much, Valérie, Sandrine, Sheila, and Eric, for your wonderful contributions and all of your work that you showed us today. So join me in giving them a hand. So I want to take the opportunity to invite everyone to stay with us. So as Eric mentioned, we have a scam booth right here. So if you have any scam attempts or scam successes to disclose, we have people who can help you with this. We also have the Advantage exhibit back there as well as other exhibits in this space, Creatibilities behind me, different films happening. We have some robots here you can interact with. And as well, this afternoon, we're recording 2 podcasts. So if you want to stick around, at 2 p.m., we have the group Forever Young with the Montreal West Public Library, who are going to be interviewing Kim Sawchuk about digital care. And then at 3 p.m., we have the RECA podcast, and they're going to be interviewing Ryan Backer, who is an anti-ageism activist. And anybody who wants to stick around, we will be serving lunch around 1 p.m. and you're all welcome to join us for lunch. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming into Force-Space today for this conversation. And to those of you joining us online, thank you also for your comments and questions. We will be closing up the Zoom and the live stream now, but just a reminder that this remains available on our YouTube channel if you'd like to revisit it there. And of course, you're going to stick